It's cherry season, Angel.
Yes. Life is just a bowl of cherries. What can I say? That explosion of flavor when you bite into the perfectly ripe cherry. It's just incredibly intense and satisfying. And I like to go through that at least once a year for a short period of time during cherry season when they're super fresh and reasonably priced. Why don't you find a cool spot and lie down? I was talking about Whole Village as a response to these the long emergency, which we are in the middle, not in the middle of, in the very early stages of the long emergency. That is this long, drawn-out ecological, social, political, and economic catastrophe. It will be experienced as catastrophic by some, but it's actually just a transformation from one state of being to a different state of being. So Whole Village was an attempt by a small, relatively small group of people, although over the period of the incubation of Whole Village, which took about 10 years, all in all, from when the first groups began gathering to try to imagine a future where things were okay. And they, everybody would have enough. The environment would be stabilized, even regenerated. The ideas behind Whole Village, the concepts behind something like an eco-village, the whole mental landscape where things like organic agriculture or regenerative agriculture live, renewable energy, the circular economy. These were all things that were of interest to me as a young person in my 20s, starting out in the world. And I felt it was important to explore alternative realities to what was considered normal or the status quo at the time. And what would it take to bring civilization through this evolutionary squeeze that we had engineered for ourselves? And this was a human-made conundrum. If the humans failed to resolve it, it would be resolved anyway, but to the detriment of the well-being of the remaining human beings, whoever was left after the rebalancing had taken place. So Whole Village was a culmination of my adult life, thinking about these things and how to create something on the ground that would address all of these various issues and crises that were on the horizon or were already well underway. And Whole Village, in my humble opinion, was a resounding success because 20 years later it's still there and still thriving. And I think that is a testament to the good intentions of everybody involved and to my particular role as a facilitator and a project manager, putting all the pieces together in a coherent fashion. And I learned a lot. It was supposed to be my retirement plan. The plan was I would participate in the creation and construction of Whole Village, and then I would continue on as the caretaker of the property After all, nobody knew the property better than I did. I had been living there for years before Whole Village started, and I knew every inch of the property and all through all seasons. Plus, I built the new house that became the residence for the Whole Village members. I helped the architect, Dennis Bowman, finalize the design, and then I became the construction manager to implement it. So I knew everything about everything, and I figured I was perfectly situated to become the chief caretaker, and that would be a sinecure for me. That would be a position I could hold for the rest of my natural life and just grow old gracefully in the context of this magnificent eco-village that I had helped to create. That was my big plan, was to build Whole Village and live there the end of my natural days in this paradisiacal environment with a group of like-minded human beings. But it didn't work out like that. Instead, after 2 years, I did get to live there 2 years in the new house, the new dwelling, the super energy efficient, age in place, sustainably built house, heated by ground source heat pumps, and all kinds of solar heating added in, and just, anyway, state of the art. I did live there 2 years, and then I left. How is it that I came to leave Whole Village, the land of my dreams, the place that my dreams had built, where every dream came true, except the part about community that didn't quite pan out. But, you know, everything else was perfect. Well, I met somebody. I was single at the time. My second wife and I had separated early on in the development of Whole Village. She was very enthusiastic initially, and later it proved to be difficult, very difficult for everybody. I felt compelled to stick it out. She did not feel compelled to stick out the development process of Whole Village, and went off in search of her own version of it. So I was single, and I realized that Whole Village was the perfect trap for a certain kind of person that would be interested in me, for starters, and whom I would be very interested in. And lo and behold, such a person showed up in 2007, and we hooked up, and that proved to be incompatible with the vibrational level of Whole Village at the time. And so we left in search of a different experience, which we have had in abundance since then. But leaving Whole Village was not easy for me. I had devoted my whole life to Whole Village. I spared nothing except the well-being of certain other people that didn't want to come along for the ride. But personally, I gave everything I had, physically, emotionally, psychically, spiritually. It all went into the creation of that concept, the realization of that concept, the creation of the physical place called Whole Village. So leaving was painful, and I was also coming out of 2 years of feeling like I was a prisoner in my own dream. Yes, I had built Whole Village, but in 2005, what I built and created turned against me and was inclined to chew me up and spit me out. And I found that a very unpleasant experience. And even though remained there. I lived there. I was a member. I was participating in the community. My heart actually was elsewhere, somewhere else, anywhere else. And there were a lot of disappointments in the reality of Whole Village compared to the dream that started the whole thing. If I look back on my life, I've lived long enough that I can do that and have a story or two or 10 or 20 or 30 or 50 or 100 to tell. I can see that my life has moved in 7-year cycles, that every 7 years some really super significant event happens in my life that sets the tone or the stage for the succeeding 7 years. And at the end of those 7 years, there is another experience which again transforms my life into a different phase. So Whole Village for me was a 7-year. There was a 7-year cycle there, and it certainly took me a good 7 years to mourn the passing of Whole Village. And there was a lot of healing involved, psychologically, ethically, and spiritually, legally. There was a lot of healing had to take place, and regeneration of things like purpose, meaning, friendship, and community. As part of that process, the other main, I say the father, if I'm the mother of Whole Village, as the father of Whole Village was Dennis Bowman. He was the architect of record, but also a person of great ability and inspiration. He was an inspired person, and he certainly inspired me in many ways. And we worked very closely together during the planning phase, during the 7-year cycle, from the beginning of Whole Village to the end, or the completion of the development phase. We were constant companions and are really family in many ways. Had a very familial relationship with it. And Dennis also planned to spend his last days at Whole Village, as I did. And he actually ended up doing that because shortly after he moved into Whole Village, he became ill, and he was a tenacious individual who did everything he could to slow down the progress of his illness, but within 3 years he was gone, and that was a big blow to me personally, because I had depended on Dennis actually for a lot. And he was a big booster of my newfound relationship with my new partner. And he did everything he could to help us and assist us. So his passing was also a huge and irreplaceable loss that I had to deal with. I had to start fathering myself. When I was planning my future life at Whole Village, my retirement at Whole Village, that was just a fantasy. I kept telling myself there was plenty of evidence. There were many clues along the way as Whole Village went through the development phase, the construction phase, people moved in, it became a living community. There were many indicators that my fantasy was not going to materialize, but I ignored them all, really, because I just wanted to hold on to that original vision, because at least it was something I was familiar with. I knew it, and I didn't have any place. Whole Village was the end of my life up till that point. It was the place I wanted to be, to end up. It was the best. I was 56 years old when my whole village dreams came to an end. 2 years later, I left. Actually, two and a half years later, I left the community, and I really had to fundamentally rethink who I was going to be, or who I thought I was. I had a persona, the creator and maintainer and spokesperson for Whole Village. That's who I was. I had been that for years, but no longer. And I didn't really have anything that was drawing me, that was pulling me. I felt like I had just come to the end of the story. It was it. It was done. It was finished. And
Were
the
you
rest
depressed?
was. I was, yes, yeah. I was quite depressed. I went through it started with the disintegration of my marriage, which I'm not. I'm sharing the responsibility for that. It wasn't done to me. I participated in the ending of my marriage through the choices I made. So yes, I was depressed, and I was also in a personally disempowered state of mind. Fortunately, my new companion, who I met at Whole Village and then absconded with, we ran away. We were bad. We were like naughty children running away from home.
That was the best time of my life.
It was a great adventure, and it freed up a lot of energy. It certainly freed up a lot of sexual energy. And that also gave rise to a creative outpouring as a consequence, or a concomitant part of the experience.
And
Excuse
you
me.
were what? How old were you when we met?
I was 58. 58 years old.
And what were you thinking, jumping in bed with like a young woman with small children?
A woman that was the same age as my eldest daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I felt fine. I didn't have a problem with that. Raised a few eyebrows at Whole Village, and my mother also was, because my new partner came with the two small children, one still in diapers
And breastfeeding.
and breastfeeding. And my mother said, "Are you sure you want to do this? You've got grandchildren." I even have a great-grandchild.
You never looked back.
We never looked back. No. It was onward and upward. Ever greater glory. We certainly have lived in a string of glorious residences and properties,
Mm-hmm.
starting with Whole Village, which is no slouch when it comes to beautiful properties. It's 200 acres of pristine Caledon land with a creek running through it. You know what I mean?
And a nice pond.
And a lovely
Swimmable
pond, a
pond.
very swimmable pond, spring-fed pond. Yes, and a maple sugar bush, and wetlands and farmlands and hiking trails.
Some rolling hills.
Yeah, nice topography. The housing is in the middle of the property, so it's quite private.
Mhm.
It's very nice. It's really an idyllic setting. So that I moved there in 1998 onto that property. 2 years later, it became Whole Village. I stayed, and 10 years later, in 2008, I left. So I had 10 fantastic years on that fantastic property. And after that, we lived in a succession of amazing places.
Well, starting with Dennis Bauman's residence with the swimming pool on the second floor.
Yes, yes, King Summit.
With an indoor swimming pool on the second floor.
When Dennis moved into Whole Village, it was at the same time that Anna Mae and I were moving out of Whole Village, and he offered us his mansion at the top of the hill in King City. Yeah, well, out in the countryside, outside of King City, King Township, which he had built in the 70s himself. He designed and built it. He did a lot of the construction himself. And it was just a magnificent building, just amazing, amazing, amazing building. And it was ours for 8-9 months. It was a while. And after that, we moved to King Creek Farm, a 300-acre estate, old money in King Township, right at the edge of Vaughan. And we spent 3 years there. And that was just a gorgeous, gorgeous property, and just beautiful. And the perennial beds were outstanding. It's a property that was always on the King City garden tour.
And then we moved to the mansion on the hill with the indoor arena.
Yes.
That's where Isa was born.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And after that, we spent the summer at the Village.
Oh
the
my
Village,
goodness, that was great.
Which is just a unbelievable gem of a property in King Township, on 20 acres of the moraine land. And I don't know what, Whole Village is, the new house is like 15,000 square feet. It's enormous, and there's like 25 people living in it at any time. The Village was a single family residence. It was 18,000 square feet. It was just huge.
Remember the party that we had there? Oh my God.
Yes, we had a legendary party that summer, at the end of the summer. Legendary. And then after that, 7 years at Side Road 17 in this century stone farmhouse.
With the magnificent barn.
Newly renovated bank barn. Yeah, endless fields, hay fields, soybean fields, wheat fields, corn fields, just a little bit of woods, lots of sky, huge amount of sky. Yeah. And a very cooperative landlord.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, who was happy to employ us to make his place more beautiful and more functional, and create equity for him. Surprise, surprise.
We are in the market for a new and improved property where we can bring our dog and pony show, aren't we?
Yes. We're looking for new digs. Our current placement is lovely. It's excellent. I'm afraid it's transitory, and we must move on. So we're looking for a new situation, new partners. And I think we need to move to the next phase as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the 2 years we've spent here have been a type of hibernation, and given the external circumstances we find ourselves in with this endless pandemic and nascent climate change peeking up over the horizon, the tremendous societal transformations which are underway now that are so large that we can't even see them. It's just like a tsunami. If you're out in the open ocean, you don't even notice. What tsunami? You know what I mean? You get a little lift. But if you're on the shore, when the tsunami hits, It wipes everything out for kilometers inland. What is going to be required in the next 20 years is more like a triage. It's more like what you see at in a mobile army surgical hospital, if you can remember MASH.
Oh God, yes.
Yes, because the war is upon us, and it's the enemy is us, and our creations. Okay, it's our own creations that are now attacking us. Okay, and those creations are what is at the root of climate change, and what is at the root of these extinction events. Okay, it's our own creations which we are now having to defend ourselves against. So all those Terminator movies, you remember?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're all true. They're all allegories. They're just describing the situation in the present. They're not about the future at all, of course. They might be set in a future, but they're about the present, what is happening at the present. So in order to deal with our own creations, which are coming back to bite us on the butt, oh, and while they're at it, rip our throats out. We're not pussyfooting around here. The danger is real, and it's pervasive, and it's not going away. And there's no small fix. There's no minor band-aid. There's not a small thing that you can do.
Whoa! Good for you! Holy moly! Wow! Good save, Jeff. Gosh, Kung Fu fighter.
Pay attention. You have to pay attention. Even while you're creating the future you want, you still have to live in the present and account for all of the shit that's going to happen. Yes, I have good reflexes.
Is that your Tai Chi training?
That's my Tai Chi training, if you're correct. And also because I've learned to pay attention. You know?
Isn't that a fundamental aspect of visionary leadership?
Yes, to live in the moment. Well, how can you live in the moment and be thinking about the future at the same time? Well, anyway, figure it out.